Today we are looking at 3 cave disasters where adventure turned into a desperate fight for survival. From flash floods in Kentucky to a mine collapse in Nevada and a cave-in in Oregon, real incidents that pushed human endurance to its limits. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Our first story involves a horrific flood that put survival to the test in Kentucky's massive cave system. What was meant to be a routine exploration of Hidden River Cave in Hart County, Kentucky, in March 2019 would quickly devolve into a brutal 72-hour marathon that tested the bounds of human endurance and reformed cave safety protocols for locals. A team of 5 veteran cavers from the Bluegrass Grotto Caving Club, each with a minimum of 10 years of spelunking experience, went deep into the cave system to map a newly discovered passage that promised to connect with the fabled Echo River chamber. A crystal clear sky with ideal temperatures greeted the start of the morning for the perfect conditions to enter and explore a cave. At 8:30 a.m., they entered the cave, all kitted out with their standard equipment of helmet-mounted lights, backup batteries, basic first aid, emergency food rations, and their mapping equipment and tools. The first hours passed without incidents, as one would have wanted, while meticulously recording the twisting passages, leaving behind survey stations every 50 feet. 3 hours into their expedition, at approximately 100 feet underground, the situation took a radical turn. Unbeknownst to the team, a powerful storm system had moved in unexpectedly, dumping nearly 4 inches of rain in just 2 hours. The first sign of trouble came as a low rumble echoing through the passages, the telltale sound of rushing water that every cave explorer dreads. Within minutes, the surging water had taken out their principal exit route, and they retreated to a higher chamber they fortunately had seen and marked in their initial passage. The water continued to rise with a frightening speed, and they were trapped on a muddy ledge 800 feet from the entrance, with nothing but their helmets and basic survival gear. The emergency food supply, enough for a 6-hour flight, now had to be stretched much beyond that. The constant 55-degree temperature of the cave started to wear on them as their clothes became soaked from the humid air and occasional water spray. They devised a system where they rotated time on the few dry parts of the ledge, while others stood guard, monitoring the water level for changes. Immediately, their training kicked in as they went into strict conservation mode. Only one helmet light stayed on, turned on for 15 minutes every hour to conserve batteries. It was only 12 hours after the time they said they'd emerge that the cave's property manager alerted the authorities upon seeing their cars in the car park well after their intended return. Flooding barred rescue divers from the spot. Flooding had turned otherwise passable tunnels into hazardous, full-blown underwater falls. The local emergency services established a command center at the entrance of the cave and summoned experts from the National Cave Rescue Commission. Weather radar indicated that the storm system could hang around at least another day, making the rescue very problematic. The stranded cavers heard from afar the drilling noise as the rescue teams were trying to break through an alternate access point. Most of such attempts were obstructed by the complex geology of the cave. It wasn't until after 48 hours, when the cavers had been subsisting on carefully rationed granola bars and collecting seepage water, and a break in the rainfall finally allowed water levels to drop slightly. Cave rescue specialists from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana had assembled at the site, establishing industrial pumps which would help lower the water level. Families of the team members kept their vigil at the surface, while media crews from across the country descended on the small Kentucky town. It wasn't until a technical rescue team finally reached them through a tight bypass passage they had discovered, using specialized cave-penetrating radar equipment. The passage, barely 14 inches high in places, required rescuers to remove their air tanks and push them ahead while crawling through near-freezing water. They found all the 5 cavers cold and exhausted, indeed alive, having survived through cautious management of the little resources they had and their vast experience. Extraction took another 18 hours, with each being guided through that treacherous passage individually. The last team member reached the surface at 2:15 a.m., amidst cheers from rescue workers and family members who had maintained their vigil for over 3 days. Our second story involves 2 geologists who are trapped by a sudden collapse in Oregon's treacherous limestone caves. On an idyllic autumn morning in October 22, Marble Cliffs, Oregon, a quiet town, became the site of a dramatic rescue operation that would capture national attention and redefine the understanding of geological hazards within the Pacific Northwest. Enticed by reports of unusual mineral formations, 2 local amateur geologists had entered the relatively unexplored cave of the area's limestone cliffs to collect samples for a community college research project. Locally, the cave was known as Dragon's Throat because of its peculiar formation at the entrance, which had been created over millions of years through the action of acidic groundwater dissolving the limestone bedrock. Although it wasn't mapped, it had recently gained more and more interest from the geological community owing to its unique crystalline formations and unexplored chambers. About 3 hours into their expedition, and roughly 250 feet beneath the surface, a series of tiny tremors soon afterward deemed the result of seasonal thermal expansion. In the face of the rock sprang a horrible chain reaction. Though nearly imperceptible at the outset, the vibrations started to loose a network of hairline cracks that over hundreds of years had begun to develop across the cave ceiling. Without warning, a huge chunk of the cave's ceiling collapsed, pinning them behind several tons of limestone and debris. The falling rocks missed them by mere feet, but completely sealed off their exit route. Their only lifeline was a narrow air shaft, barely 8 inches in diameter, that connected to the surface through natural rock fissures. This vital air supply would ultimately prove crucial to their survival. The first call for emergency was made by a hiker who heard the collapse and noticed dust billowing from the entrance of the cave. Local fire departments, arriving within 30 minutes, soon realized they were in over their heads. In a matter of hours, the small town would transform into a hub of rescue activity, as experts from across the country converged on the site. Preliminary efforts to dig clear the debris were dangerous, as unstable rock promised further collapse. Every movement of the loose material sent its ominous rumble through the cave system. It was supposed to be one from digging to very highly technical engineering that at first needed creative thinking. Experts in mine extraction from nearby copper mines were brought in to evaluate the structural soundness of the remaining cave passages. With sensitive seismic monitoring equipment, they found that conventional drilling could result in another collapse, which made them think of another strategy. Scans by ground-penetrating radar indicated a possible rescue path through an adjacent rock face, but it would be reachable only by carefully digging through 40 feet of solid limestone. For 6 days, rescue teams worked in rotating shifts, carefully digging a new tunnel while simultaneously stabilizing the existing passage. It was painstaking work. Every foot of progress had to be subjected to exhaustive safety checks and structural reinforcement. Above ground, the town rallied around the rescue effort. Local restaurants provided hot meals for rescue workers, while hotels offered free rooms to visiting specialists and family members. The trapped geologists survived on seepage water they collected in their helmets and the few energy bars they had brought along. They kept their sanity by cataloging the mineral samples they had collected before the collapse, and using their geological training to study the cave walls visible in their helmet lights. It was through this narrow air shaft that rescuers were eventually able to send down small packets of high-energy food and fresh water, along with a narrow communication wire that kept them in contact with the surface. On the 7th day, at about 3:45 p.m., rescue workers finally broke through to find both survivors dehydrated and weak, but remarkably stable and conscious. Upon seeing daylight, their first request was that their geological samples be recovered, a request that brought smiles to the faces of these hardened rescue workers. The accident triggered a new wave of debate on access to virgin cave systems and the use of professional guidance for amateur explorers. It gave birth to a statewide commission on cave safety and new regulations for geological exploration in karst territories. Both incidents stand as powerful testimonies to human resilience and the dedication of rescue personnel who risk their lives to save others. They remind us that while the temptation of underground exploration might be strong, nature certainly commands respect and due preparation. These events have turned into case studies that are important in various cave rescue training programs around the country, enabling future explorers to be better prepared for the unexpected challenges lying in the darkness beneath the surface. Our third story is located in Nevada, where an abandoned mine rescue operation would prove to be challenging to conventional extraction methods. In July 21, a 17-day nightmare has spiraled out of a usual geological survey into the abandoned mine's deeper cave networks of Blackwater Mine. A team of 3 mining engineers had been making their way through the century-old cave system to evaluate its stability for a proposed mining museum project. The naturally formed cave had been extensively altered by the silver mining operations in the late 1800s and stretched nearly 2,000 feet into the mountainside via a complex system of both natural chambers and man-made tunnels. The trouble for the team started when it realized that several decades of mineral seepage had greatly weakened a very key support beam in one of the main tunnels. While they were documenting this danger, their motion triggered a terrible failure in this ancient mining structure. The resulting cave-in shut off their only exit route, while it also took out their only main communication equipment. The only thing which broadcast their general location to the surface was their emergency locator beacon, which is designed to punch through hundreds of feet of rock. The complication of the situation at hand was immediately realized. Due to the unstable nature of the surrounding rock and the historic nature of this mine, conventional heavy excavation methods threatened to cause further collapse and could even destroy irreplaceable mining artifacts. There was a fine line that needed to be met between speed and preservation. It involved experts on underground mining from Chile who flew into India to help oversee the operation after having experience in the celebrated 2010 Copiapó accident in their country. Invaluable were they in helping with a rescue plan strategy that would actually save the two trapped engineers by identifying a fissure natural and running in parallel to the fallen tunnel using high-tech ground-penetrating radar and laser mapping. The rescue operation transformed into a round-the-clock engineering project. 3 separate teams worked simultaneously, one stabilizing the original collapsed site, another drilling a rescue shaft following the natural fissure, and a third team monitoring the mountain's seismic activity for any signs of additional instability. Local mining companies provided state-of-the-art drilling equipment, while the town's residents organized support services for the hundreds of rescue personnel who had arrived to help. But the trapped engineers had their problems underground. The collapse had blocked access to their supply cache. All they had was what was contained in their emergency packs, which were supposed to last 72 hours. The men did find a small trickling underground spring that provided drinking water, but food was very scarce. The mining-experienced engineers made a makeshift camp in a stable chamber, apportioning their helmet lamp batteries carefully to conserve light. Day 12 brought a breakthrough where, through a narrow borehole, the rescue people were finally able to establish communication to send down vital supplies, along with some psychological support, to the men trapped below. In this phase, the technical knowledge of the engineers was very valuable since they could give detailed feedback about the surrounding rock composition and hence helped the rescuers find an optimized way of drilling. The final phase of the rescue involved threading a specially designed capsule through the newly drilled shaft, which curved following the natural rock fissure. The 22-inch diameter capsule had to make several tight turns while maintaining a constant orientation. Each engineer would have to lie completely flat and not move during the hour-long journey to the surface. On the 17th day, at 2:37 a.m., the first engineer emerged from the rescue shaft into cheers by rescue workers and waiting family members. By sunrise, all 3 men had been safely extracted. Despite their ordeal, they had managed to document extensive data about the condition of the cave, which would prove invaluable later in both the museum project and for future mine safety regulations. The Blackwater Cavern rescue revolutionized approaches to mining-related cave rescues. It showed how historical mining sites could be preserved while modern safety standards were maintained, and led to the development of new protocols for assessing abandoned mine stability. The incident also fostered international cooperation in mine rescue operations, with several countries subsequently establishing a shared database of rescue resources and expertise.